Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women Talking Money podcast. My name is Gretchen from Magenta Financial Planning, and today I'm joined by Pam Sutherland. Pam is the founder of Truestar Talent. In 2015, after having worked in recruitment for a number of years, she had the goal to set up one of the largest and ethical wealth management recruitment companies in the UK. Pam believes that strong client and candidate relationships are built on genuine care and ethical decision making. Truestar has recently received the Wealth Management Recruitment Company of the Year 2024 Excellence Awards for ethical practices in that year. So how fantastic to start off with. And welcome, Pam, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on the 2024 award. That must have been a very proud moment.
Well, thank you. Yeah, for me and for the team, it means the world. We do this job to help people. So whether you're a candidate, you're a client, you're an IFA looking to sell your business, we want to do it in a way that we can really help, because people put a lot of time into their careers. So you want to make sure that you're respecting that and helping them at every step of the way. So to have got the accolade for that is lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I gave a short biography there of things. Do you want to, is there anything else you'd like to add, tell people about that are listening about you and about Truestar?
Oh, we're just very down to earth. It's exactly what it says on the tin. So we go out of our way to help people. That is just really the core of what we do. The aim of everything that we do is to do good. So, we want to make sure people have informed choices. We're helping them all the way through the process. We're helping clients really find the right cultural fit. So if someone's coming in, they're going to thrive. Or if someone, and this is a hard one for people because it's quite emotional, but if they are retiring or changing their life in some way where they're going to sell their IFA business, that's hard because they've built such a long relationship and a deep relationship with their clients. If they're going to move them somewhere, they have to believe it's going to be the right place for those people. So again, for us, from an ethics perspective, that's so important to get it right for someone. So that's what drives us, really.
Brilliant. And what if you got, your bio said about that you'd been in recruitment for many years, sort of what other things or what was your experience of recruitment before Truestar?
Okay, well, I'm old, right? So I remember recruitment before email. So
Okay.
back in the day, so we're going back a bit here. Probably sometime in the 90s, I first started in recruitment, so I was in my 20s. And at that point, you used to put an advert, I think it was in The Guardian, or was it The Times? It must have been The Times on a Thursday. And you do it once a month, but that would give you enough candidates for the whole month. And then everything was done on fax, it was done by letter. You had to go out and see everybody. Everything's done by phone, but it was a landline. It was a very, very different process. So I did that for a number of years, then changed what I was doing as we moved. And we moved up to the Midlands because I was down in London at the time. And it was very, very different working in a small market town. I thought at one point, I think I'll be a CV writer. How marvellous that would be. The most boring thing I ever did in my entire life. Because as you might have picked up, I'm a bit of a chatter. So I thought that's not for me. So I saw a banner ad of all things. Again, show me age, you don't see those anymore. And it said, do you do competency interviews? Are you freelance? Would you like to do this as well as your job? And I thought, yeah, I could do that. And I ended up working for a very small company up in Scotland, but they had some of the most amazing accounts because the stuff that they did back then was cutting edge. So they looked after Halifax and Lloyds, they looked after Microsoft graduates, and I used to go around the country with a camcorder, like Challenge Annika, and video people and do competency-based interviews that were then, so show me age, it was on tape, so you posted that up to head office, it was burnt onto CD-ROM, that was then posted out to the area managers so they could click on the competencies to decide who they wanted to see. But back in the day, it was really, really cutting edge. Left that role then when I was just turning 40. Got made redundant with the whole of the team. That whole, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with my life bit? That freak out of, I'm 40, I'm really old. But 40's nothing, is it? But at the time, you think it's this big thing. And I worked out, I like helping people, working with people, talking with them, I thought, well, why not go back to being a recruiter? Did that freelance for a little while, then set up Truestar, then was working pretty much, it was just me, myself and I for quite a long time. And then in 2020, as we all know, the pandemic, Had a phone call. Some of the guys wanted to come and work here that I'd worked with on and off for 20 years. And I said yes, turned it into a national and not looked back. We've now got people across the country from Scotland down to Cornwall, and they're fabulous. I'm really proud of everyone that I work with. They all do it the right way. They all want to help people. Everyone is very consultative. They're really good listeners. Yeah, it's been great, and I'm the happiest I've ever been, really.
Wow, and also like so much has changed in the way that we deal with things, and the speed of stuff must have just changed so much. And also now, as you say, like you haven't got to drive all the way around the country. You haven't got to do all of that, have you? So what a change in the recruitment sector there has been.
Huge. It's been quite seismic. I think the core bits have stayed the same. So the stuff around really listening and helping and getting to the underbelly of something. So rather than taking, say, a spec, for example, and going, yeah, thank you very much, I feel that, I want to know how it works. I want to look at it like a candidate. I want to see how it breaks down, where it fits, so that when I'm briefing someone, I can really tell them about it. That bit hasn't changed because that's all about the active listening and questioning. But the mechanics of it, the speed of it, the white noise of it, with the number of emails, the number of videos, the amount of social media, that's increased so much. And yet, I really like the video stuff because I think you can help more people quicker because you're not going all around the country doing stuff. So I think for me, I see it as a positive.
Absolutely. So for so many of us in our roles and, financial roles, financial services is very much the same. The fact that I can help someone from all around the country without having to physically be with them
Mm.
and still have face-to-face contact via video is amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Obviously, we're here today to talk about money for the podcast. I'm looking forward to seeing how all those different things that you've talked about already, like having, moving from London and, changing roles and setting up businesses impacts that discussion that we're going to have.
Okay.
Because I know it will. But starting off then, let's start with, early days. Like, what's your sort of first memory of money? And do you think reflecting on that in preparation, do you think that you can see how that shaped some of your views that you maybe even still have today?
That's a good question. Getting in deep there, straight from the beginning. I love it. Okay, so earliest memories. Well, earliest memories, if I'm going right back, would be preteen. And it would be on a Saturday. So mum and dad would take me and my sister into Cabran, we'd go to Martin's, and then we'd have a choice of either a comic or sweets. You couldn't have both, you could have one or the other. And it was we took it seriously. We'd spend an enormous amount of time trying to decide which one to have. So we'd be looking through all the comics to see if they were good that week. If it was great, we'd maybe have a comic. If it was going to be sweets, we'd look at, I know this will sound mad, but we would look at how many sweets were in a packet, because then you can see how long you can make them last. So they were the things that we would look at from that perspective. Mum and dad didn't really believe in pocket money. So if you're doing a chore around the house, you were just helping out the house. So from a money perspective, you might get a little bit of money at Christmas or Easter for maybe grandparents or something, and you might put it in your money box. But there wasn't a lot of that. So at an early age, that whole thing about saving and spending wasn't something that we really talked about, because money was tight. So it was about, if you're going to use it for something, it had to matter. You had to have value. It wasn't about necessarily the cost, although the cost was important. I think if I look a little bit further ahead to when I was just turning 16, I was desperate for money. I wanted a social life. I wanted to go out. So as soon as I turned 16, when I got my national insurance number, I went into town. I walked all around town and asked everywhere whether it would be at a Saturday job. And I ended up having one at WH Smith's and started off on Front Tills and then worked my way up to doing all the books, which I really enjoyed. But one thing I would say is I've got such a lot of respect for anyone that works in a shop. It's really hard work. It's a lot of time on your legs, a lot of time on your feet. And yeah, it's tough. So when I was in that role, I found out you could do a diploma. And if you did the diploma, you got an extra £1 or an extra £1.50 an hour. So to do the same job. So I made sure that I passed that because then obviously I was getting a little bit more money for what I was doing. And then I worked there Christmases, Easters, summer holidays, whenever they'd have me, really. Again, though, from a money perspective, it wasn't really about saving at that point. So when I say a week's money, it would be in a Saturday's money, would probably go on hairspray. I was a late, these big perm, it needed a lot of work. Probably a bit hard to visualise that now with very short hair. A bit of lunch and then a bit left over for a bit of social life.
So when you reflect on that, there's a couple of times you've mentioned, that actually when you were preteen, that really it wasn't about, it was more about managing the budgeting of that money, really, by the sounds of things. Not having a lot meant that actually, it was very looked after carefully. And then obviously the freedom that gave you as a teenager when you were earning your money to buy your hairspray meant that you could spend it. So, at what point did you start to, recognize that actually I can't just spend, I need to earn more to save more or that kind of thing? What stage do you think that was at?
I'm a late bloomer, me. So in my teens, I think I had quite a non-conservative view of money. Money was there to be spent. I didn't actually have that much money. This is when I was working in London. So I was on a relatively low wage, but then it was compensated with bonus. So I would say at that point in time, I was living probably in my overdraft. I was living on credit cards, and then I'd pay it off at the end of the quarter and then start all over again. So at that point, it was just more about the instant gratification. It was about the toys. It was about the gadgets. It was about I lived in the moment quite a lot. It was also really stressful because I was always worried all the time about, oh my goodness, it's going to be the end of the month. Have I got any money at all? I wouldn't want to live like that now, but that was how it was for me at that point. So it was probably only when I was, probably about turning 30 before I started getting a bit more grown up about thinking about money in terms of how I spent it, how I saved it, what you did with it.
I imagine it's quite typical of the pattern of recruitment in a pay, in the sense that, you've got basic minimum and then driven by that big bonus of completing those deals. And that's why when I'm outside, so we've got a recruitment company in our building. And sometimes when I'm outside their office, and you can tell when they've got someone's made the kind of got the deal or got the candidate in, or it's a good day because everything's suddenly a lot louder in that office.
Yeah, it's quite old school that. And I think there are a lot of recruiters that are still like that. I would say that we're the polar opposite of that. So we're not driven by that part of it. So for me now, coming back into recruitment in my 40s, my view was to be the opposite of what I was in my 20s. So back then it was all about how many CVs have you sent out? What's the conversion rate? Rah, 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 during the bell. None of that. I'm not interested in that. It's about helping someone. So if you consistently do the right behaviours and you consistently work towards just helping someone, success will come organically. So I think if you chase success, it's a hollow thing. So for me personally, and for everyone in the team, we don't think about it in terms of a fee. We think about it in terms of a person. And then it's the added benefit of getting paid for it. Now, if we didn't get paid for it, it'd be an expensive hobby that we can't afford. But that's not the driver. So I think where in my 20s, I didn't know any different. So I learned the skill set. And there's some very good skill sets I learned from there, and I'm not knocking it. But I think now it's more about consistency and helping. And then from that, you get successful. So I think for us,
Yeah, and equally, it's not a particularly nice, I guess that's where I was coming from, in the sense that your existence as an employee in that kind of role, where you're driven so much by that commission sale and that, that, as you say, ringing the bell, and that kind of motivation is all driven by, because you need that bonus for that quarter. It's not great for people you're working for, but it's also not great for your purse either, because it's hard to manage.
yeah, horrible. Yeah, as I say, would not go back to that in a million years. But it was a learning experience at the time, and I never regret what I've done. I just try and find the positives from it and the learns from it and move forward.
Yeah, and also it is quite an interesting one, because quite often when we talk about risk, within financial services, you'll ask questions like, would you prefer a job that's employed and consistent and all or regular pay packet, or would you opt for, a more lesser pay, more bonus, or more, that kind of thing, as a kind of risk appetite, And it does take a certain amount of person to be able to work in a role where you're not going to necessarily, just get that regular pay and become and be bonus driven. It's not for everyone.
I agree. And I think if I hadn't been made redundant when I was 40, I probably couldn't have afforded to do this back then. So by having the redundancy, it was like a comfort blanket, which helped me build the business. So
Mm.
because I had that, I could do it. Would I have done it without that? No, would it have been too scary? But because I was lucky enough to be in that position, it helped me build something the way I wanted to build it, as opposed to having to build it a different way because it's the way that I could afford to do it.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So if you say fortunate enough, but yeah, out of a difficult situation of becoming redundant comes opportunity because of the buffer that it gave you, I guess.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
So do you think there's anyone specifically who's influenced your relationship with money, or an event, or was the redundancy the event? I'm intrigued.
I put some thought into that because I was thinking, I thought, yeah, you might ask me that question. So I thought, okay, what would be my answer to that? It will make him die a million times over when I say this, but I would say my husband. He is very risk adverse when it comes to money. He's very much a saver, not a spender. Makes him sound tight, doesn't it? He's not, but he's very much about not having credit. So because I'd come from such a different background where, oh yeah, it's fine, we'll pay it off. I now come round to the idea of, no, actually we don't do credit. We save for something if we really, really want it. So we're looking at that value versus cost, that need versus just want. There's nothing wrong with wanting things. It's just sometimes I think, do I need it? Or will it bring joy to someone? Then it's worth it. But a lot of that has been driven by Ian. And I'm really proud of him for that because it's really helped me inform my view. And I think that was from my 30s. And it's a lot more freeing. It's a lot less stressful. You get a lot more joy out of something because you own it. It's not on old money here. It's not on tick. It is something that you've saved up for and wanted and now got. And I get a kick out of that, and I really thank him for that. And funny enough, before coming on with you, I was talking to him about it, going, "I'm going to be talking about you today," and he was like, "No." I said, "But it'll be all good stuff, I promise."
It's really interesting. So do you think that there are aspects, bearing in mind that, these are great money habits that Ian has taught. But at the same time, what we tend to also see sometimes with people with money habits of that extreme, or maybe when they are much more of a saver than a spender, or they're a lot more frugal when it comes to things. And whilst they're great, they're really sound habits. No one, to prevent credit, to prevent debt, all of those things. Do you think that you've had an influence on him as well? Like that maybe there are some fun things that maybe Ian might not have felt was, quite able to do that you've brought to the table?
Possibly, I think I'm more of a planner. I'm a very organised human. I like, maybe a little bit too organised sometimes when it comes to planning, right? So I'm always thinking about, okay, so what next year, for example, do we want a holiday? Now, where do we want to go? I'll shop around for it, I'll look for it, and I'll talk it through with him and say, look, this is what I think we should do. What do you reckon? Oh, that sounds great. Let's do it. Whereas he might just let that happen. So I think for things like that kind of fun stuff, yeah, definitely that's probably more me. But we balance each other out really well with that. So it kind of works. I think from he wouldn't do this, you see, but I, for example, have a spreadsheet, and my spreadsheet will have Christmas and birthdays on it, and it will have how much I spent per person and what I've got them. And I might buy something for them earlier in the year because I see it and think, oh, so and so would love that. Or, oh, so and so would love that and it's in a sale. Great. I can actually spend same amount of money, but get them something so much better. But I also do it because I'm of a certain age that if I didn't do that, I might end up buying them the same thing 2 years in a row.
Or forgot that you bought it in
Yeah,
January and then it's
exactly.
December. Yeah, yeah. We all do that. Yeah. So it's really nice though to hear about when relationships have kind of have offered balance of both, from both directions. Yeah. We've talked about it a little bit then. So how would you describe your current relationship with money if I asked you to do that in one word?
Conservative.
Okay.
And I'm really proud of that because it's something that I have developed. I think I'm not as risk adverse as, say, my husband, which I think is a good balance. But from a money perspective, I'm looking to how I will spend money, how I will save money, where I will invest money. That I'd really think about these things as opposed to just do them. So that's I think probably why I'm saying conservative.
Yeah. And also, I guess it's probably around about where you and your husband are in your journey of thinking about work and time and work and what will happen after work. Like it's probably quite natural for where you are in your lives that you're really thinking about that balance between saving and for the future and enjoying life now. Like it's crux years almost.
Yeah, no pressure at all, eh?
I say crux years just because I think the whole thing about what retirement will look like is completely changing. So I don't know that it's a straight dead end, an end stop like we had before. And I think all of those things are going to change. But it is years where maybe other expenses aren't as high. And so we're starting to think about, really that balance. Do you think that that's true?
I think it is. I think things have very much changed. If you think of like our grandparents, when they retired, they just stopped. On the whole, it was, that was it. You were done. It's time for rest. And that was it, and they didn't actually tend to do a lot. Where I look at like my parents, my mum's in her 70s and I can't believe that she's in her 70s and she's still working a couple of days a week because she completely turned her life around in her 50s and became an art teacher. And she loves it and she loves working doing that. So for her, it's more of a joy. And if I look at, say, my team, I'm one of the youngest in my team. Quite a few of the people in the team are in the 60s and 70s. And they do it because they enjoy it and because they want to do it. It's not because they have to. And I would like to think that if I am lucky enough to be that age, that I will do that because there's a passion in me to do this. It's not, I might not do it to the same work rate as I do now, but I would like to think I'm still doing it because I'm still helping people. So I think I don't know whether retirement in the sense of what's in my head of my grandparents retiring, for example, is A, realistic anymore, B, I'd want it. So I think it has changed and it changes my view on it as well. I don't see myself thinking I'll get to 55 and retire. There's a lot of people that do that and are lucky enough to do that, or they turn 60 or 65. I don't really see that. I just see the balance changing on what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I also think, though, because of the pandemic and living through that, we are all a little bit more aware of, but I don't just want to just save for that, just be all about like scrimping and saving so that then I can suddenly stop work at 60. In fact, I'd probably prefer to work for a little bit more and have some freedom to do some stuff now so that I'm living a nice balance.
I agree with that. And I think a lot of people say in their 50s and maybe in 60s, their health is better than it is later. So if you want to go out and do stuff, you want to go and do some traveling, you want to go and do those things, now is a better time than later necessarily if you're not going to be well enough to enjoy it. So again, I think you're right. It's that balance of when you do stuff, especially since the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit more about job and or like career choices. So I want to know, with these various different roles you've had and certainly around Truestar, what role has money played, in shaping those career choices and the opportunities that have come?
It's been different at different times, I think. So in my 20s, it was all about let's earn lots of money. I think if I look back, it was probably my most unhappiest time. It was very stressful. I did very well. I ended up being a divisional manager within a major recruitment firm, but I wasn't very happy. And I didn't have a lot of time. And then I think when I moved to do the consultancy stuff and then go work for a company where I managed the recruitment for Halifax, for example, I did that. That was what I was doing for 10 years for advisory stuff. That was really interesting because it was all about looking at the processes, looking at the conversions, looking at the quality coming through from the agencies and from the direct applicants. That was a very interesting time. It paid relatively well, but it wasn't necessarily about the money, it was about the learning. And I got a real kick out of that. And I actually loved the little team that I worked with as well. We were really quite close knit. And that was really, really interesting. And then obviously redundancy and then thinking about what I was going to do. And then coming on to do what I do now. I think because I spent so much time figuring out what was going to make me happy, I ended up doing something that I love. You know, I wanted the things that were important to me and I wanted to take away the things that switched me off. And I think because of that, it might come out a little bit in how I'm talking about it, but I absolutely love what I do. And because of that, it is successful because there's so much joy in it. So I would say that in the last 10 years or so, it's probably been the happiest I've ever been and probably the most successful I've ever been. I was thinking about it in terms of money. But I'm not thinking in those terms because that's just a nice byproduct.
And it must be really interesting what you were saying about, you know, the people that you've that now taken on since the pandemic and the fact that you're creating a business that works differently to that kind of very traditional kind of side that and I'm sure a lot of the listeners will engage with that kind of style of recruitment, that you've been trying to shape something that's different, that isn't focused on the money, that's focused on people. Like that must be a really massive change for some of the people that are now working for you.
I would say possibly not.
Okay.
The reason for that is everyone that's here chooses to be here. So we've all chosen to work together. And I think the reason why we've gravitated to each other is A, because I've known most of them for about 20 years on and off. They've either recruited for me, I've recruited for them, they've been a client, they've been a candidate. We've known each other for a long time, albeit we've not all worked together. And I think we've gravitated to each other because we all feel the same way about recruitment.
Yeah.
We feel that it is about that genuine need to support other people as opposed to chasing the bug. And I think that's why we don't work elsewhere. And that's why everyone is here, because we are all like-minded. It makes it a lot easier because we have shorthand. You know, we all know where the other person's coming from, and we all know that we're all coming from the impulse inside us is to come from a place of good. We might not always all agree on the way of getting there, which is fine. And that's a good thing because you want different thoughts, but you do want to share best practice. So I think for us, it's like a little magnet. It's just drawn us all together. And I think
Lovely.
it was just similar, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so if I was to ask you what financial freedom means to you and how you're working towards it.
Oh, I would say financial freedom for me would be to get rid of stress from worrying about money. So it's not, I don't tend to stress about that these days, but I would say if I was looking at financial freedom in that more general sense, I would say that would be the biggest thing. I think for me, it would be spending time. Time for me is more important, I think, because you don't get a lot of it. So how you be able to afford to spend that in the way that you want to, as opposed to just being in work. I think that for me would describe financial freedom.
And do you think you're managing to work towards that, or have you already achieved it?
I think we're getting there. I think it's always a process. There's always something else you've got to do. I think, you know, as a business, it's still growing. You know, I'm still developing it. We're still coming up with new stuff, new ideas, new things. And that will suck up a lot of my time because I find it interesting. You know, we just launched a new website beginning of this year because I wanted it to show the ethos of us as opposed to just being yet another financial services recruitment company. You know, that's extra stuff that I'm doing as opposed to not working.
Hmm.
So, but for me, that's a passion. So for me, it isn't work, if that makes
You're
sense.
working on your business, not in your business.
I like that. Well done, you. I like that. Yes, and I believe in it as well. It's something that it is something I really care about because I think it's really, I want to help more people. I want to help more businesses. I want to help people. I just want to help. And I,
Hmm.
and I think that's the thing at the moment that is all my passion. Yes, we've got life outside of work. Yes, all of those things. And yeah, and that's really, really important because I do believe in balance. But yeah, I absolutely love it.
So if you could give one piece of financial advice to a younger Pam in those 20s, when she's having to stress out and she hasn't got enough and worried about whether that quarterly bonus is going to come, what would it be?
I would have really one piece of good advice about that, which would be get yourself a decent pension. I did not believe in it. I did not think it was for me. I thought it was for old people. It didn't occur to me to become old and have a pension. You'd have to pay into it for the entirety of the time. I would have said start it a lot earlier. That's something I'm still playing catch up with. That I think would be the best piece of advice I would have given myself back then. I did have a pension, and it's not like I was completely without one, but yeah, I didn't really put a focus on it
No.
like I could have done. And of
Oh, well,
course,
it's hard, like everyone now, if we're thinking, but 20-year-olds now, you are going to be you're going to be 50 years away from that, if not longer. It's a massive amount of time and space in between there with a lot going on. But yeah, if you can, as you say, the compounding effect of just doing it and just not thinking about it does pay off.
yeah, completely.
Yeah. So let me ask you one thing then. If money was no object, how would your life look different, if at all?
Good question. It would look different, and there would be more balance than there is now. Yes, I probably still would be doing this because I love it, but I would spend more time with friends and family than I do currently. What would I do if it was fun money? If it was like mega money? I don't know. I would buy a library and I would fill it with books of everything that I've enjoyed reading, everything that I want to read. If I had really fun money, I would probably get somewhere with a pool, and I would try and swim every morning. I might have a cleaner, but I probably wouldn't, because if I did, I'd probably go around cleaning before they came.
After them.
That might defeat the object a little bit. But yeah, I suppose that's what I would do if I had fun money.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So listen, I think it's been a great conversation today. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's
I
fun.
guess I want to try and wrap up with some final thoughts. So, what one thing would you want every woman to know or think differently about when it comes to money?
Don't be afraid to talk about it.
Well, that's nice for a Women Talking Money podcast.
We don't. And I think having a podcast like this is amazing, Gretchen. I think what you're doing is amazing because it's opening up that conversation. People, especially women, will talk about relationships, we'll talk about other things. We don't tend to talk about money. We don't tend to talk about savings. We don't talk about investment. We don't talk about credit. We don't talk about debt. We just don't tend to talk about it. And I think it should be something that is talked about just like everything else, because it informs everything we do in life and it changes your life one way for the better or for the worse. And I think the more we talk about it, the more people go, I didn't know that. Oh, you've been through that situation as well. And that's a really good idea. I'd never thought of doing that. And it opens up those conversations in a way that will just help people in general and especially women.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So just tell us where people can find out about you, about Truestar, about, basically what you're working on. And so we can put that in the show notes as well.
That's really kind. So yes, it's truestartalent.co.uk is our website. We do have sister websites as well, but that's the main one. You'll find us all there with videos of everybody on there talking about their backgrounds and why they do what they do. You'll find out all about the different types of recruitment, the acquisition stuff that we do for people who are selling their businesses. You'll find us on LinkedIn. We're pretty present in most places, really. I mean, that's my aim, is to be seen more because then we can help more.
Lovely. Well done. I think it's amazing. I'm so pleased that we've managed to talk today, and thank you for, giving your time to me, certainly today.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.